So very easy then if someone wanted to take part and make a donation anyway?
Yes, and volunteer. There's spots on our, an application on our website for volunteers. So if anybody'd like to wish to, and we're always looking for someone on the committee. I was going to bring you my next question.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's a huge event. You know, you've got to have coordinators, you've got to have planners, you've got to have people working with the vendors, you've got to have people working with the dancers and the athletes, as it were. So that's a huge undertaking as well.
And the setup.
How many volunteers are we looking at? I mean, can we go by last year's number? Like, obviously more than 100 people volunteer.
Well, really not. We had, the day of the games, we probably had 10 or 12 volunteers set up to do different little jobs around the park as the games continued. Friday is the setup, and that's our main time. Now, we might have had 6 extra men to help us set up the stage. The dance stage is the big, it's the heaviest, and it takes the longest to put up. Again, the physical work again on Sunday to tear everything back down again is another time that we'd really encourage anybody with a pair of strong arms to come in and give us a hand. And that's the rest of the year. It's planning, and it's a meeting every month, every Thursday, third Monday of the month.
Okay.
And again, 4166-373-4166 will get that person in contact with our administrator, and that Margaret will help them out then that way.
So Margaret's the full-time person on the line, I guess.
Yes, she is.
She's the first contact.
First line of acquisition, as it were.
Unless some of you folks know some of the rest of us, and then we seem to get contacted.
So this year's event is Saturday, June 27th. It's going to be at Donegan Park, as always. It's the 46th annual. Is there any contingency? Obviously, last year was brutally rained out. Is there a contingency date that you can set up in case of rain, or is it just
really
basically
at that point? No,
it's too late at that point.
The dancers, we can a contingency plan. We usually get them into the high school gym, but then last year, as a result of that, all of the parents and supporters that follow the dancers, they went to the school and they never came back.
Yeah,
so then we lost that audience, lost that possible source of revenue, at least partial in a way. And but the rest of it, unfortunately, there's not much we can do. There's no good acoustic place for the pipers to perform.
Other than outside, no, not really, is there?
And the heavy events, now granted they will perform. Kevin has indicated that they have performed, and where there was actually water laying on the field, where when they did the shot put, they had to watch and see where it went into the water and then go around and feel around to find it.
My goodness. Well, shot puts are quite heavy as well, aren't they? I mean, we're talking
about 50-some pounds.
Yeah.
Well, they continued last year in that rain.
They worked all last year. It was getting a little muddy there at times, but they seem to enjoy it.
Wow. Well, let's talk about how many people can compete at like, for instance, in the caber toss. How many people do you normally have competing in that?
Usually 6. There's usually 6 or 8 professionals. And the amateur could run to 10. I don't think there's a limit on how many people can compete, as long as I'm sure just somebody can't walk out of the crowd and say he'll do it. Kevin kind of watches that because of the injuries. But I think the sky's the limit on
so that's pre-registration as well then, if you want to take part as an athlete.
Has it lined up.
So they would they could contact Margaret, and then she would pass them on to Kevin Fast, and he'll contact them directly as well.
And or a lot of them, I think by now they know it's Kevin, so they contact Kevin direct. In fact, most times I think most of the heavies events are directly contacting Kevin.
Now, you refer to amateurs and professionals. The professionals, let's talk about them. I mean, are they going from games to games to games competing? Is there a living to be made at Highland Games, you think?
No, there's not a living, but it's a passion of theirs. We were in Scotland in '98, and we were in Edinburgh, and there was a games on quite a ways away from where we were staying. But anyways, the long story short, there was a lad from Halifax that was competing, and another lad from Hamilton that was competing at the games. I didn't never expect to see a Canadian over there, or anybody other than the Scots over there.
Let alone two of them.
Yeah, that's two of them, and they were doing the tour.
Wow.
And in Scotland, there's many games. In fact, sometimes they go through the week on a Wednesday. So these lads will just set up a tour, and away they go.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, that's, again, you know, they are to be commended, the gentlemen that take part in these events, as well as yourselves. I mean, this is a huge undertaking, not only for the organization itself, but to the preservation of heritage. And I mean, that's the history of this country, isn't it? I mean, the Scots founded the Nova Scotia, for instance, and I mean, they've just come down. Henry Hudson, I believe, was from Scotland himself, was he not?
Yes.
Was he a Scotsman too? So, I mean, a lot of the great Canadian explorers. Actually, someone referred to Canadian society as one of the best societies that Scotland has ever created. So, which I thought was, and they will. Actually, my father-in-law is a Scotsman. He's got a great book called "The Scots: How the Scots Invented the Western World."
Well, I've seen that book. I haven't read it. I have a friend that has that book. I should grab it from him, because he came into the garage one day and he says, "George, you should read this book."
It's good reading.
Yeah.
I mean, from basic common law to all kinds of wonderful things that we do. Banking in this country. I mean, one of the things that they say preserved the banking institutions in this country was our strong Scottish heritage. I don't know what that means exactly, but.
That's that.
Well, on that note, that's going to bring it to an end of this segment here, gentlemen. I want to thank you again for coming on board, and thank you.
Very much.
I'm Dave Glover. You're watching Municipal Matters on TV Cogeco. We'll be right back after this break. Please stay tuned.